Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Right now we are peeking into the Greenbone saga, and we are covering the second third of Jade War by Fonda Lee.
It's like more than a third, because this got us from like the 30% mark to the 75% mark. Because I have the ebook.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh my gosh, this is a huge chunk for us to read.
I know. And like so much happens. We might give up around chapter 40 and be like, well, all right, we'll talk about the rest next week.
I think it ends in like the perfect spot though,
It
actually.
does.
So if we can power through, we need to.
Guys, it's the morning. Hannah's had 2 cups of coffee. She's moving right now. So you're getting me at like my antsiest. It'll be a fun episode.
Yay.
This morning I texted Laura and I was like, I'm writing the synopses right now. I have 80 pages left. And we checked in together 40 minutes later. I was like, I actually meant 180, but I thought it was 80 at the time.
80, 180, close.
Same exact thing. Like 240 versus 340.
I
no difference.
Got one placing.
But before we get into Hannah's mental breakdown, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
Just for like listeners who don't know, like Hannah's going through a very stressful time moving, so that's what she's referring to.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
She's been moving and things have been a lot for her at the moment, which it's like there's a bunch of boxes behind Hannah at the moment. She's literally recording in front of a bunch of boxes.
It's literally the 4th of July today, and like we got invited to a couple of cookouts, and my partner kept being like, no, why would we
just can't celebrate?
And like I might be crying right now. I don't know.
We're in a time of mourning. We cannot go out and eat hot dogs and celebrate. What are you thinking?
I told Laura like my usual ritual by myself, because last year I was by myself and now I'm moving in with someone. It's fine. Is like ordering deep dish pizza and watching Jaws, and I was like, that's really hard to bring other people into because it's such a specific tradition for the 4th of July to be like, we eat deep dish pizza and we watch Jaws. So it's like, we'll eat brats, it's fine.
I appreciate your commitment to traditions though, because like you have certain traditions like this where you're like, every 4th of July I eat deep dish pizza and I watch Jaws, and I'm just like, what do I do on 4th of July? Do I have any traditions?
I mean, it's like a 2-year tradition, and it's just like, yeah, I buy Reese's Pieces and I make popcorn and I eat deep dish and then I just watch Jaws. And it's a great.
You should watch E.T.
Okay, so I never watched E.T. until I was like 13 because one of my sisters was terrified of E.T. and remains terrified of E.T. to this day. Like if you talk to her about it, she's like, he is not cute. He is terrifying. So when you watch E.T. for the first time when you're 13, you're like, I kind of don't get it. Like you just don't. Like some of the movie magic is gone. So
I love it as an adult.
I don't love it as much as I loved Gremlins. Let's just put it that way.
Oh my gosh, I think it's far superior to Gremlins.
But like Gremlins is funny. E.T. is just really long in my mind. Like it takes a really long time to get anywhere.
Sad. I love E.T. But I think that's also one of those movies, like my mom loved E.T. and it was just like one of those things where when it would be on, like, E.T. And it was just like we would get so excited for it. Like
well, that's like, do you know those stupid kid things that just seem to happen? Like I happen to know that one of them is terrified of E.T. We also know that for a while, my second oldest sister, who must be like some type of sociopath, would wake my mom up in the middle of the night to watch Dumbo because it was her favorite movie, and she wouldn't.
Why is that her favorite movie?
When she was little, it was, but she was afraid of the elephants on parade portion of the movie, so she couldn't watch it by herself.
Like the drugs part.
Yeah, it's the drugs part, and like there's a bunch of dancing like fake elephants, and she was terrified, so she would wake my mom up at like 2 a.m. to watch Dumbo with her, and it's just like, who does that? That's not okay.
Okay, also that is the most depressing Disney movie. There are so many implications about keeping animals in captivity and like tearing them away from their mothers, and I
know it's not great,
and the abuse and everything.
He loved Dumbo. I said, I think she might be some type of like
I'm concerned.
Right. So like we had lots of Dumbo and no ET in my household.
Oh my gosh.
But no, I do love a good Jaws movie. We're also going to be unpacking while we watch Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park is one of my favorites. I've seen all of them and love them.
Okay, I haven't seen the last two of the Chris Pratt ones because I heard they were bad.
As somebody who like appreciates like nostalgia things and like seeing people from the original movies, I still kind of liked them. Where it was just like they kind of made the movie for me.
Only thing that made me consider watching them. Like I haven't done it yet because I just never got around to it. And I was like, I'm not going to pay to watch these movies. Let's be honest here.
You know, like, I'm not the biggest Chris Pratt fan anymore, but those Chris Pratt movies I thought were okay. I think he did fine, but I'm not sold on Bryce Dallas Howard.
Oh my gosh.
She's the one that makes it a harder sell for me in those movies. And she and Chris Pratt don't really have very good chemistry, in my opinion.
They do not.
I don't know. I don't feel like the two of them work well. Yeah. But I did enjoy those movies too. I just think that the originals are
better.
So much
Sometimes
better.
You just want a good original. So we're probably going to do the original stuff.
Well, the thing was like, it's one of those things similar to like how people talk about Star Wars, where it's like, you don't like the newer stuff as much as the original, but you're just so glad to have some stuff with like within the same realm, the same world, that you're just like, this wasn't as good, but I'm still okay with it because we still get more. And it's like, yeah, I get it. Where it's like, yeah, these movies aren't as great as the original ones, but I still get Jurassic Park and I still really like that.
That's
so it's
very
like,
fair.
I'm not going to complain too much, but I will a little.
I want it to like visit the world, but maybe not that part of the world if I didn't have to.
Yeah.
Best friend Bobby of the podcast, her child loves the animated Jurassic Park TV show, which is a demented show where I didn't understand the premise when I originally watched it. The premise is like when the like Jurassic Park movie shuts down in the first like reboot movie, there are children stranded on one of the islands who are part of like a camp. And that is such a demented thing to watch. These children like
it's
run
like
around.
Literally Lord of the Flies, but they tried to make it fun.
Right. And like there are like poachers out there trying to murder these teens. And it's like, what the heck? And apparently like it got homophobic because there's backlash that like two girls got into a relationship, even though there was like a heterosexual romance in the show too. So it's like, were you actually bothered or were you just homophobic?
Yeah.
So weird show, weird tangent to get into, but Hannah's 4th will be spent with original Jurassic Park and Jaws, just a little shine to the Spielberg. Thank you.
Spielberg of it all.
Spielberg of it all. But before we get into all that, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So I've mentioned previously that I watched The Bear season 1 and I wasn't like super gaga over it. Like I couldn't figure out like some of the characters were very bothersome to me in the first season. I was just like, this show kind of stresses me out, makes me a little uncomfortable with some of these characters. I don't really, excuse me. I was like, it's enjoyable to watch, but I don't really get what the big deal is. I watched season 2. They got me back into a Hulu subscription because they showed me video of Will Poulter. Is it Pouter? Is that how you say his name? Poulter.
I think it's
Is it Pouter or Poulter? They showed me a video of him chopping things and looking very handsome. And I was like, fine, I'll get Hulu again. You convinced me. And so I watched season 2 of The Bear and I am completely changing my tune on this show. Like I think that this show is phenomenal. Like this season specifically is so beautiful and well done. And there are a couple episodes in particular that made me extremely emotional to watch. The acting is amazing. Absolutely, absolutely amazing. The actor who plays cousin on the show, his name is like Ibn Mas Barak or Bakrak. Okay. He needs all of the Emmys immediately. Like throw them at him. And I've seen him in other things too. Because he was in Andor. I think he was in Girls. But he's been in a handful of things, and I think he's like a really dynamic actor, versatile, but in this show in particular, he is doing something above and beyond special. Like, he is a phenomenal actor. In the first season, he was the character that I had the most problems with, and I was just like, I do not understand how people can be connected with him and like him as a character. They gave him so much more heart in this season, and I was so emotional like watching his journey throughout this. But he's not the only character that has this like beautiful emotional journey. There's so many other characters in this that they dedicated episodes to and gave just beautiful, beautiful storylines. I'm so impressed by this show. There's an episode in particular that I'm thinking of with the character Cousin, where he goes and is kind of like punished and has to be sent to this this restaurant to work for a while. Or he thinks it's a punishment because he's been kind of acting out and everything while they're trying to create their restaurant. And it's not really a punishment, but he doesn't understand that. It's an opportunity for him to learn and grow in this new place. And it's like the best restaurant in pretty much the United States.
Oh, wow.
It's a 3-star restaurant. And so he goes there and he gets to learn all the different aspects like of this restaurant. He plays all sorts of different roles working there. And he starts off really bitter and kind of like, I'm only here because my cousin's trying to punish me and blah, 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 and kind of tries to like make a scene and cause a fit and all this stuff. And they're like, look, you're not being punished. This is an amazing opportunity. You know what people would do to be able to work here for a week? And something in his brain just kind of like clicks where he's like, I need to take advantage of this. And he ends up having such a positive experience and being able to connect with all of these people, and they end up forming great relationships, and he learns and he wants to take those things back. It is such an emotional, heartfelt episode. And then he's also dealing with a lot of things personally with his daughter and his ex-wife. And I was like sobbing in this episode because it was just like so much happens to this character, and you're shown so beautifully like what he's going through without like being completely in it, if that makes sense. Where you've had glimpses of this in the past in episodes, but you don't get to be as in it as you are in this episode, where you kind of understand like what he's dealing with and how hard it is for him to kind of move on with things and grow, how he's been kind of held back by himself.
Right.
And it's just incredibly beautiful. And the episode that precedes this is one of the best cameo episodes of TV in general, I think, because they have so many famous, amazing actors in this episode. And they all do a phenomenal job, where I'm watching this and I'm thinking, okay, which of these people is going to get best supporting or best guest appearance in a comedy show or whatever for this, because this is considered a comedy for whatever reason, even though it's I don't feel like it's a comedy. There are some funny moments, but if anything, it's a drama. But anyways, like, this episode has Jamie Lee Curtis, who does a phenomenal job, Bob Odenkirk, phenomenal. There's countless people in this episode, and they all, as a cast, put together the most human and touching and tense situation that I have ever watched.
Okay.
And you are able to kind of see how this experience has affected all of these characters that were there, and how it still affects them in the present. And someone described it as harrowing. And I think that that's really the best word to describe this episode, because there's so many shock factors, and there's so many moments where there is like an awkward silence that occurs in the show, and you yourself watching are just like, just gotta be really quiet. Like, this is really awkward. Like, you're in it. It's so amazing. And it's just a credit to the actors and the director and the cinematography of it all, you know, that they have done such a perfect job capturing the silence, capturing the moments, the emotions. And those two episodes in particular are just fascinating and beautiful. And I am completely changing my tune on the Bear. This show deserves all the awards. These actors deserve all the awards. They're absolutely phenomenal. Everyone should watch season 2 immediately. Like, it's so good, so good. And if you weren't sold on season 1, I would highly recommend season 2, because the direction of the show has shifted so much. They've made it a show where it's like, even if you weren't like me, you weren't like super sold on it season 1, they've figured out a way to make the show similar enough that you're still able to follow along, but it's shifting and growing and morphing into a new beautiful thing in each episode, which I really appreciate. Great show. I can't say enough good things about it.
I need to watch it with all the time I have.
I mean, I watched it so quickly. Like, somebody said they really enjoyed watching it week to week, and I'm like, I couldn't do that, I don't think, because it was just amazing. It's one of those shows that I was so glad to be able to binge.
Right. That's good. I'm glad. Have you been reading anything?
You know I have, because I've been putting off Jade War because
I have to ask the question for the show. You just called me out and like, you know what I'm reading, Hannah. We have conversations off mic. How dare you?
So here's the thing. Like, this was a lot of reading this week for Jade War, and I definitely waited to do my homework until last minute, and that's on me. But
I was recording 24 hours before something dropped, and I almost was like, hey, we could do on Thursdays we read.
Well, the reason that I really procrastinated on one 600-page book was because I was reading another 600-page book, Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I'm all about like gushing this week because this book is phenomenal. I am so like enthralled with this book, and I've been doing a buddy read with biggest supporter of the podcast and champion of indie books and all the things past it. And we've been having just a really great buddy read. And this book just definitely allows for like really deep conversation and thinking about things. And so we've been able to talk through some things, and I've been able to ask questions because this is his second time reading it. So my first time going in, I'm like, oh, I'm a little confused about that. And so it's kind of nice to like talk to somebody that's like, oh yeah, well, I think that this is what's going on. And anyways, this book is really great. It follows kind of a terraforming project that has gone wrong. And you get to see the two different perspectives of what's happened after this terraforming project. And so you're seeing the life on this planet and the perspective of humans who are leaving Earth looking for a place to live, which will probably be this planet, they're hoping, because this seems like the most suitable place to live. And so you get these really unique perspectives, and I won't say what the perspectives are just because I think people should read it. And I think that that's maybe one of the things like that is kind of the most interesting about this book is one of the perspectives. So I won't reveal what it is in case people don't know anything about this book. Okay. I knew a little bit about it before I started. That's why I wanted to read it. But if you're interested in any kind of like end of the world scenario, where are we going to go? Some deep questions about like morality and ethics concerning like human life going forward, I think this is definitely a book that you would be interested in. And we also get a lot of like biology. And if you're interested in any kind of like animals or anything like that, or science, definitely read this. I would say it's pretty science heavy, actually. And maybe that's why I like it so much. But it was also one of those things where I'm reading and I'm like, okay, you know what? I was a biology major, and damn it, why didn't I come up with something this interesting to write about? This is amazing. But I can't even imagine the research that was put into this book to create a fictional tale like this. It's just absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. It may be my favorite book this year so far.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah. I need to read that one with all the time I have.
I was a little like hesitant to recommend it to you because I know that you are not the biggest on like reading all the science heavy stuff.
Right.
And this has a lot of science in it, but
maybe I'll do audiobook so I don't have to, I can like listen.
That's fair. That's fair. I think I've really benefited from being able to like, I have the physical book because I was waiting for months for this book. I had put in a hold at the library like back in December. And it was around my birthday that I was like, okay, well, I've been waiting for 7 months or so, 6 months or so, and they're still telling me I have weeks to wait because there's that many people trying to get this book from the library. So I was like, well, I have a gift card. Should I buy this book? And people were like, yes, buy it. And I'm so glad I did because it's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Good.
I can't wait to read the next 2 in the series, but I've been told a couple things about the books going forward, and I'm a little nervous because one of the aspects that I really like about this book, I'm told, is not carried forward, and it makes me nervous because I want that perspective and I don't want to let go of it.
Right.
Because it's so fun and interesting. But Children of Time, I have not really spoiled too much. I think people should just read it. It's phenomenal. I'm in my sci-fi era, but if you really like sci-fi and you haven't read this, why?
Why?
You should.
That's amazing.
I'm definitely going to be checking out all of Tchaikovsky's other books now too, because this has got me hooked, and I'm really curious because he started out in fantasy and then moved to sci-fi. So I'd be curious to read some of his. I'm going to read his other sci-fi work for sure. Like I've already got those on hold at the library, and I probably will just have to buy them because everybody wants his stuff. But I think I'm going to have to check out some of his fantasy work too, just because I'm kind of curious how people like make that jump from one genre to another and what their other work is like.
Similar to Fonda Lee. Oh, and Martha Wells. Both. So we're finding genre-defining people or bending people.
Because didn't Fonda Lee start with sci-fi and move to fantasy?
Exactly. So
then Martha Wells started with fantasy, moved to sci-fi, and then went back to fantasy because she's got Witch King. So we've got all sorts of authors doing amazing
both
things. And you know what? It's just rude of them to be so
to be
good.
This amazing. Listen, I have a job and I'm moving.
Fonda,
I'm just trying to finish my one book.
Fonda, if you're listening right now, here's the thing.
Be less amazing.
It's a little unfair of you to be like this. If you could just slow your roll, slip up a couple of times just to make us feel better.
Exactly. I agree. I'm glad we're both on board with this. Be a little less amazing. That's all we're asking.
That's all we're asking. Adrian Tchaikovsky, stop being so smart. Martha Wells, just you know what you did, Martha.
You know what you did.
Fonda, this episode is about you in particular. You're good at everything and you need to quit.
This finance stuff that you write for everyone to understand. I just don't get it.
Martial artist? Seriously, come on.
Why all of it?
Why you got to do it all? Hannah, what have you been reading and watching?
So for reading, I listened to the audiobook Say Nothing, A True Story of Murder and Memory in Northern Ireland by Patrick Radden Keefe. So I finished it. I would say it has like one of the mainstays of nonfiction that I've been finding more and more where they're like, this is a story about this. And then it's not about that. It's just like an overarching story.
Dang it.
It's still a very good story, but they're always like, this book was very much sold on the premise to a lot of nonfiction heads. So a little bit of it is like the problem.
That's how they got me.
Yeah. Or like a nonfiction murder mystery heads, I would say is better. Like a lot of like murder mystery people, true crime people were like, ooh, this is a story of a woman who's taken and murdered during the Troubles. And it's like, kind of like, it's kind of about that, but also it's mostly about like the actual overarching history of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, which for people don't know, it was like a huge time of unrest with the IRA in, Northern Ireland, who wanted to try to remove themselves from Britain, but also were under huge, like incredible tensions between Protestants and Catholics in Northern Ireland. Derry Girls is a good representation of the end of the Troubles, where like things have kind of been like that for a long time. And there are certain things that happened during Derry Girls, which is an excellent Netflix show. If you haven't watched it yet, why?
Can I just like mention something? So somebody I saw was taking one of my friends from like my community is taking a trip to Ireland, and they posted online and said, I'm going to Ireland. Does anybody know of any weddings that I could go to? Because I really want to dance to that boat dance.
Oh God.
Just like, I love that you're asking this. Like, are there any weddings happening that maybe someone would let me go to and just
Just
do that
dance
boat
to
dance
rock the boat.
and
You
then
could just
leave.
dance to rock the boat. Like just dance to rock the boat. Start your own trend. Invite friends
I think
over.
that's so funny though that they want to go to Ireland, do that boat dance at a wedding, and then just leave the wedding.
So amazing. So
Continue.
I do think that the book is very good. It's very history heavy, and I listened to the audiobook, which is done by someone with a Northern Irish accent.
Love
So I had
it.
to listen to it on a little bit slower of a speed because I'm a
Mhm.
two times the usual speed girly, and I think I had to drop it down to like 1.75. Um, but it's a very good look at the history of some of the troubles. It highlights some of the people who were part of the IRA, who were part of one of the bombings in Britain. Some of the bombs did not go off, some of them did, but they ended up being arrested and they went on hunger strike for a very long period of time. They were force fed during it. And so it kind of goes into the details of all that happened and kind of the brutalization of Irish people during this time and how they were kind of seen as lesser than, especially in Northern Ireland, and what they were fighting out against. And there is the overarching true crime story of Jean McConville, who was a mother of 10 children
Wow.
and was rumored to be a spy. There is a lot of controversy over whether or not she was one. I would say that it's not really settled in the book, but it's looking more likely than not that she was not a spy. She just kind of got turned up with helping a Protestant soldier at one point in time, and like rumors spread like wildfire, and she ended up being killed. There's some discussions on who was involved, et cetera, et cetera. But it also goes into a detailed history of like what happens to her children during this time, because they were obviously a broad swath of ages. So some of them went into orphanages. It kind of touches on some of the horrific nature of orphanages in the 1970s and 1980s and all the crap that happened in them, and especially in religious-based ones with some of the people there. And so it kind of does like a very broad array of a lot of stuff that happens during the Troubles. Because of that, it was a little bit hard for me. Hannah's not a science girly. Hannah is also not a history girly. What is Hannah into? Mostly television, but like I have a hard time keeping dates in track. I have gotten into my era of blaming everything on my ADHD, but I actually do think that probably has something to do with it, where dates don't, like, numbers are really hard for me to keep track of. It's probably why I'm also not the greatest at like science and processing and everything. Like those parts of my brain don't work as well. So I will say that the history of it was a little bit difficult because they were throwing out names of like, and like, oh, at this period in time, this person was doing this. And I was like, who was that again? Like, I can't keep track of
But we've
where they
talked about
were.
this many times, and we were just talking about it recently with our friend that although you may not be a STEM girly, Hannah, you have an uncanny ability for keeping track of like plot lines and TV shows, and also like the literal script. Like you
Yes.
have it memorized after watching a single episode and can have it memorized for years. Like I can binge a show literally 2 minutes ago and try to quote it, and you'll be like, oh yeah, the part where they go, and you'll say the exact line, and I'm like, what the heck? I just watched this. How did I get it wrong? I watched this years ago.
I'm very good in like details of like storytelling. Storytelling is much easier for me because then I watch it happen, so I can actually know what went on when. Like I'm really good at placing things in time for myself. But placing it in time when you just tell me like in 1882 this happened and then 1890 this happened, I honestly could not keep track of that if you paid me money. Like I need to actually read out the script, which is very effective if you have to like analyze a lot of data and be like, oh, I remember somewhere it said this. But certain things are very fuzzy in my brain. So certain parts of this book were harder for me to understand. It probably stopped me from loving it as much. But I think I understand why lots of people love this. It is rich in history. It's rich in texts that we probably don't know that much about outside of Derry Girls.
Sure.
But it's a very interesting look into like a very specific type of violence in Europe. So
Well, I'm
very
excited to check it
interesting.
out. I've had it on my shelf for a while now, but nonfiction scary, so I have not read it. And
I feel like you would
I
like
need
it.
to do it.
And if
It
you're
was kind of marketed well, I think, because people were saying it was similar to like Erik Larson's Devil in the White City.
uh-huh.
And you had recommended that one to me, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm very much about nonfiction books, like historical nonfiction books of that
Right.
nature, where they read almost like a fictional book.
Right.
And that one, it's like that one especially, you have to kind of suspend your disbelief. Like,
yeah, there's so many
this is
moments for Erik
real?
Larson is like, imagine you're walking down the hallway and you hear people rustling in the room. And it's like, well, this isn't historically accurate in any sense of the way, but like, I'm willing to go on this little trip for you because history is hard for Hannah to remember and storytelling is easier. So
and that's probably the best way to put it, that it's a perfect combination of history and storytelling. And I think that that's kind of the way that this book was marketed to people. And I know it's a very popular book. And I also know that a lot of people are like me, where they bought it because of the way that it was marketed, thinking, here's my opportunity to learn some more history and get into nonfiction. And then they put it on their shelves and I've not read it yet.
Right.
So good on them for selling some books.
I'm a huge Erik Larson girly. I've read almost all of his works. So yeah, I would say that that's a very good comparison. And I almost wish I had read the physical book. Like I liked the audio. I liked having someone with like Northern Irish accent telling the story. It's interesting. But I think I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more if I was like reading it and not like listening to it in my car on the way to work in the morning sometimes. So, but I really liked it. I like the look at the history. It did focus a lot on women, which was very good. And the women who affected like certain things in this area, because like the hunger strikes started with 2 women and then ended with a lot of men joining in. And it kind of talked about like certain men co-opting that when it was based on like very specific requests for support and asking them to be like moved from a British facility to an Irish facility, because, you know, that's was a huge part of their political protest. They felt that they were political and soldier type prisoners. They did not feel like they should have been arrested in criminal courts and everything. And so it talks about like how they had that very effective communication and they were being pushed very well for that. And then like other people were like, yeah, we're involved in that. And they were like, no, you're not. And so it gets into kind of that story. So that was all very fascinating to listen to.
Well, and that's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because I feel like that's one of maybe like the major flaws that I find in other nonfiction, like historical nonfiction, is it's so focused on the men of it all, the white men of it all. And you miss how history has been impacted by all the other people in the world. And nonfiction, especially, is a genre that is very dominated by white men authors. And so I think you do get a lot of these perspectives from that point of view. And then they're also following like the George Washingtons and all these people who have been large figures in history, but also fit this very similar demographic. And then sadly, we don't get the perspectives of, or just the impact that other people had during this time. So that's great that this author was able to go out further and bring in how other people were affected by this.
Right. So that was very good. And then for watching, last night we took a break from unpacking and, you know, Hannah crying to watch the movie Missing. It's a 2023 film. It's called a Screen Life thriller film. I just pulled that up, which means like it's a mystery that's only told via computer screens or like phone screens. So you have to have the storytelling told through a very specific like medium, which makes it very interesting. I think sometimes it's a little bit clunky to like have like, you can't have a phone call because, or you can have some phone calls, but like sometimes you want to see 2 people interacting. So you have to have them have a FaceTime call. And so you have to write around like, how can they be on a FaceTime call right now? The mom thought she was phone calling her daughter. So then they have to have a recorded video chat and everything. And you have to pull up Instagram. You have to do this. You have to, you know, show like Snapchats that are being uploaded, you know, so it's a unique way of storytelling, especially in this kind of genre, which is like mystery. And I really liked the movie. I thought it was very good. It's a standalone sequel to Searching that had Henry Cho in it, or John Cho, apologies. So this movie came out in 2023 and it's starring Storm Reid. And her mother goes missing in Colombia and she starts trying to search for her mom because there's like international issues. I will say like good things about this movie. It does something that I think a lot of other movies fail at in recent years. You and I have talked about this with the thriller genre, where like they keep needing to ratchet up the mystery, so they make it so impossible to guess that you're just sitting there being like, really? Why
It's like
are we
none of this could have happened, and I'm bored.
exactly? Where this movie like does have certain elements of it where it's like that feels very far-fetched, but also like it is still stuff you can guess, where it's like, oh, I noticed this about those photos. Oh, I noticed this about that. Oh, look at that. We think that's going on. Um, and there were certain things like I definitely guessed. There were certain moments where I was like, oh, this is what's going to be happening right now. And that was helpful. So I very much liked the movie. I liked the way of storytelling. Sometimes with the screens, it made the dialogue a little clunky. But there were certain things like I didn't guess the callback on. And I was like, oh, that was really smart that they did that. Like they've been mentioning this the entire movie and I didn't think about it. And so I really liked the movie. My partner really liked the movie. I thought like, I don't know, it's really nice to see a movie where they're like playing with genre, especially in like 2023. It's just really cool to see like, hey, smartphones are a huge part of how we communicate. So like, why don't we see someone communicating via laptop and smartphone and smartwatch and everything? And they have like good groundwork for like what's in the background and like what's going on. And like it also has real world limitations, like what happens when a battery is dying and what happens when this is dying. So like that's all very helpful. So I really liked it. I thought it was fun. It's on Netflix, and it has like an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. So lots of people like it. So I would say it's not the best movie. Like certain parts of it are just clunkier than Clunk, but like there's certain parts that are very effective. And I was excited to be able to guess certain things about the movie. So if you're looking for a thriller that you could actually enjoy, Laura, I highly recommend.
You know, I've kind of come to the conclusion that I think I'm out of my thriller era.
That's fair.
And I don't know why. Is this something that you experienced as well? Like I went through a phase like when I was like starting to go to the library and they would recommend me books and they always recommended thrillers. And I mean, that's when I read like The Silent Patient and stuff like that. And I got all the Two Missing Girls and all that. And now I'm at the point where I'm just like, I don't think I'm going to take your recommendations anymore. You take my recommendations because I just can't with that. And even the librarians have tried to tell me like, oh, this is like a thriller heavy library. Like everyone likes thrillers. I'm like, well, I don't. So please quit recommending it to me. But
also like, I don't know. That's kind of, I get why it's a thriller heavy recommended like library. Like that's allowed to happen, but if you're not into them, they should be able to accept that.
Yeah. Like I think it's just one of those things like they have got so many people that love thrillers that's kind of what their go-tos are for recommendations, similar to like when people ask me for a thriller recommendation, I'm like, read Piranesi. And they're like, that's not a thriller. And I'm like, I don't care, read it.
It's the best book ever. It's all the genres.
Genre bending. It's all of them. Women's lit, fantasy. Read it.
Don't read The Drowning Woman. Hannah hated that book.
But yeah, so you just like get into this thing where you just recommend the same books all the time. And I think that's maybe part of why my librarians like want me to read thrillers so bad. But I'm just like, it's one of those things where you read them for a little while and then you're just like, I'm out of my thriller era. I can't do it anymore. They're too similar. And I think like you said, where you said that they try so hard to not be formulaic that they become that way.
Yeah.
That in itself is a thing. And it's like, here's the deal. Agatha Christie has sold more copies of her books than the Bible, and those books are extremely predictable. And you know what? She didn't try to change her formula. So maybe don't worry about it too much. Like people love a good formula. So I don't know. I get it, wanting to like break out of the Gone Girl of it all, but you still kind of fall back into the same tropes and things and also, when you're trying to do this. I'm just over thrillers.
When it comes to thrillers, like I read Jackal by Aaron E. Adams. I talked about it on the podcast. And that was like a weird thriller with like paranormal elements. And it was also based like this is also something that
Was
I've
it
seen with
thriller or dystopian though?
it was definitely thriller.
Okay.
But like the thing with it is like it's a thriller that like a lot of thrillers we see today are written by white women. Emphasis on that because it is based on a little bit of like a torture fantasy for white women
Yeah.
where we often think that we are the victims, that we will be the ones being kidnapped, that we will be the ones who are thrown into these wacky scenarios where we're homeless, but we're one of the good ones, i.e. the drowning woman. And it's just this like weird plot fantasy where we have to put ourselves in the center of it all. We're like, Jackal is about Black women disappearing. And guess what? How police don't look into it and can go on for years and years and no one will care because you're in like the Appalachian area and like Black people were disproportionately affected in that area. And like even in that book at the end, there's a historical note on the Jackal about how like she put the book in a place where like trained barons who were millionaires in like the 1920s or 1880s, I forget the time, Hannah's bad with times, like literally built trains that were detrimental with like dams that would not work for the areas of people in the Black community, and a huge flood happened. And so that is where the scene takes place. Like it's historically accurate in this town that did not care about Black people historically, and it's a thriller based on paranormal and based on Black women going missing, and it's a much more effective tale.
That sounds much better actually.
Reality, like
yeah.
And so like I obviously you're not in your thriller area, so I'd never push you to read this book, but like Jackal
that sounds more like something I would like though.
Yes, where you're not reading about it to be this like, I'm going to overcome everything. Like you're coming at it from this like, hey, this woman has a lot of like deep-seated racial trauma in her hometown. And then she finds out that more is going on, and you find out why she didn't interact with this type of trauma and how it affected her and all this stuff. And like,
you mean it's not about like a woman who is finishing up her PhD in creative writing and has to come home over the summer for the funeral of a friend. And she reconnects with an old high school flame, even though she has a fiance. And they have a special night at a bar that they used to frequent. And then there's some kind of town festival that's happening, perhaps carnival, the spookiest of all. And then someone dies in a cornfield and people are going missing, but only white women. Yeah, because obviously, and she has to solve it, but she is home alone in her creepy house that she lived in because they were very poor growing up, and she was able to break free from this and get a degree in creative writing.
A Few Missing Women is a book that many people like.
You know what? The way that this book has a hold on me that I can pretty much recite it exactly.
I know. It took me a while to realize. I was like, Laura's just doing A Few Missing Women.
Yeah. I could do The Silent Patient. I know that one pretty well too. I could go Gone Girl. I know that one pretty well.
The Silent Patient made me so bad because through it all, I was like, this only works. Okay, you know what? Ruiners for The Silent Patient. While I was listening to it, I was like, this only works if he's a huge asshole. And then at the end, you find out he is a huge asshole. And I was like, how did people not see this twist coming? Like, I saw it because he's a terrible human being and we're in his POV the entire time. And I was like, this only works if he's the worst person in the world. And then he was. And I'm like, well, that's not a twist. That's just me being frustrated because I didn't think the author was smart enough to take the plot that way. And then she did, or he did, whatever. It was weird.
I think it's a that one to me is actually one of the better thrillers.
It is one of the better ones, but it still was bad because it's like
it's like a 3.5.
Like the plot twist is like you're not supposed to suspect him and you're supposed to be shocked. And I'm like, no, all the clues were there. It's like what's that terrible movie? Like, I gave you all the clues, Mr. Snowman, or like I don't know Harry Hole. There's a huge joke. What's his face was in a movie called The Snowman. They did it on the Bechdel cast. Where it's like it's a translation from a Swedish novel, and
I know that one was on the Matron, right?
Hole, yeah. Okay, and Harry Hole of this
it's like a horror.
Yeah, and it's like, well, it's also a thriller where it's like, I gave you all the clues, Mr. Hole, but like that's this.
I have not watched that. I just listened to the Bechdel cast episode. Yeah,
I listened to the Bechdel cast episode and How Did This Get Made episode on it, and so I was like, I gave you all the clues, Mr. Hole. Why didn't you figure it out? In that book, I'm always like, he gave you all the clues. If you were shocked by this twist, it just means you don't notice an asshole when you see one. But like the
Mhm.
Jackal, there is a little bit of like high school reconnection of whatever, but it's different because there is the elements of racism there, and like you are seeing
Yeah.
different. So like that one is a very effective thriller because it's changing and like shifting the way a thriller works in ways that are interesting. But like
Mhm.
that's also like When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole didn't work for me because it was a little bit too much of like same tropes of Get Out, where I
Yeah.
was like, I can't read this again and again and again. And like I got a little bit of flack on Bookstagram for not liking When No One Is Watching by Alyssa
Oh,
Cole
really?
because people were like, I thought it was a great tale on gentrification. And I'm like, look, you are allowed to think that. It did
Mhm.
not work for me. And like I didn't read that. Like I said, I think Alyssa Cole should get other books, but like because other white women get these kinds of books, so she should get a
Yeah.
million more, just like Megan Miranda. It's just like it's okay if I decide to tap out on them because I don't think they're effective thrillers. But
The
that's
thing
my
is, Hannah, it's
rant.
bold of you because there are certain corners of Bookstagram that are so dense and put up on such a pedestal. And one of the biggest ones that has the biggest defenders is the thriller corner of
Mhm.
Bookstagram. The people that only read thrillers and they have their Bookstagrams completely dedicated to thrillers. These people are intense about their genre, very
Yep.
intense.
And it's just like, I don't know. It's fine. Like I was like, because I do mini reviews on
Mhm.
Bookstagram now for thrillers because I think that they can all be glommed together. So like,
Especially when you're doing them on audio. Honestly, I
yeah,
don't know
like,
how you can do so many back to back to back. Like I'd have to take a breather between them because they're so similar to me.
I mean, they are so similar. You just kind of get used to it and be like, okay, that's the one about
Mhm.
daddy. That's the one about this. But like when no one was watching, I even gave it 3 stars and I got flack for being like, I just thought it was
Wow.
well. And I also think like certain people, sorry, I'm not like lots of people, I think, give themselves a pat on the back for reading Black authors who are thrillers. And it's
Oh,
like, well, or like, it's like, that's good. I'm glad you're reading diversely. I can still have criticism if I don't think it's an effective tool for the way they made the story. Like,
mhm.
and obviously, I think lots of people can go the other way. Like, it's hard to
Sure.
find like the right amount of like what is valid criticism versus like
What is?
what isn't.
Mhm.
So like people who would read When No One Was Watching and be like, I couldn't put myself in the story. That's not a
It's
valid
like it's
criticism.
not about you.
Yeah,
So
like um
here's the thing. It's not always about
right.
white women. And
Exactly.
I know it's hard for us to get to this point. I'm still learning. It's not always about white women.
Right.
White women who are listening, remember that. Write it on your brain in a mantra. It's not always about white women.
Right. Well, and also in like When No One Is Watching, like not to defend me, I promise I'm not defending myself. I have a lot of work to do. But like the thing that gave it 3 stars for me were the elements that this person was like, I love those elements. And I was like, yeah, you're right. It saved the
Mhm.
book for me. But it
Yeah.
also had like white savior man trope who didn't notice he
Oh.
was dating a racist. Like it
Mm.
had other elements where I was like, that is in effect. And like the way they did the
Yeah.
ending, it felt like it was kind of made for white people where it's
Mm.
like, oh, look at all these big bad guys sitting there in a room twiddling their thumbs evilly. And it's like, nope, guess what? Racists are usually a little bit more underhanded than that. And like this book is ineffective at showing that because it wants like a big, huge showdown, but that's not usually what would happen. Like most people don't care to see the downfall. They just want
Mhm.
it to happen off screen so that they don't have to get their hands dirty.
Right.
Um, so those are like the things where I'm like, hey, thrillers can be good and bad, but I'm interested. I've been in my thriller era in a highly critical lens because I'm just
I think
interested
that's what
in
you're in now because
yeah.
I feel like you started off you were consuming a lot of thrillers and you were kind of enjoying them. Now you're at the point where you're like I it's almost like an analytical stance at this point where you're like I
Yeah.
need to keep consuming them because I need to find a good one.
Yes.
And and I feel like that's where you're at where you just keep bringing them in and you're just like I haven't found it yet. I have to keep going. I have to keep going. It's like, oh, you're gonna be like the Sandman in the library forever.
Well, it does help that there's like a million on Libby and they're always like
Yeah,
available because there are too many. And so they do pass the time really quickly. And that's the
sure.
thing is like I feel like they're the
They're probably pretty
podcast.
short too.
Yeah, for me, it's like they're a podcast version of a book where it's like, oh,
Oh,
fine, I can listen to this. I don't have to be totally keyed in. It's fine.
what is it
But
about that you don't like? I am the same way where I'll listen to a podcast and I can remember every single thing that they said, but I'm not like the pressure's off to
Mhm.
have to like think about it. And with a book, I'm like, hold on, I gotta rewind because I missed something.
Like, so it's like,
What is the deal?
I don't know. It's a very different, unique experience. But yeah, so these books, I don't know. The Jackal was good. I liked Missing. There are certain things, and Missing also has a lot of diversity in it. So shocking when you have a diverse cast, lots of times they have more interesting things to say about everything in the world besides white women.
Right.
um, but yeah.
If anybody wants to follow Lene Vinay on Instagram, she does Parking Lot Pimpin'. She shares a ton of great information about Black history, being Black in the United States. She recently just shared that mantra that I did of white women, it's not all about you. And she was specifically talking about follow trains on Instagram and how she was doing like a Black women follow train. And I thought this was fascinating because she was saying that white women were getting on board and like, why can't we be in your follow train? And she was like, it's not always about you. Like, you need to realize that you can't have all the things be about you. And you guys don't support each other the way that other communities do. It's more of a fake support. And that really hit me. And I was like, it's absolutely true. There's this unspoken competition that is always there, like under the surface, and that people are always, white women, I'm going to say, are always like trying to compete with other white women and see who's the best, who's done the most of this. And that's not what it should be about. Like, especially when you're in a community online where you're supposed to be interacting and learning and having fun. It's not about the competition. Let's remember this, white women of Bookstagram. It's not about the competition. It's not about the followers. It's about sharing our love of reading or whatever we're on our specific social media to do, and to uplift others and to build the community, an actual community.
Also, white women on Instagram get a lot more benefits when they get high following count rather than Black women or other women of color. And so that's important, where it's like, hey, Black women follow trains are meant to make sure that that Black women and other people of color, like any person of color, like follow train that they decide to have. It's about uplifting those voices in a very specific way. It's about community in a very specific way. And we just don't belong to that area. We can tap out and show support in other ways. You can still follow
still follow the creators.
Yeah, like
learn. Like, I love to follow anyone that Lene recommends. Like, anyone that she recommends, follow. I'm like, boom, done, got it. And she never steers you wrong. Like, this is excellent information, and people that are definitely able to give you a perspective that you don't have, and to help you unlearn things that you have learned throughout your life that are harmful. And yeah, highly recommend going and checking that out. But I think we talking about that, like us talking about like the specific tropes of white women, that really just kind of stuck out in my brain as like something that she mentioned. I was like, that is such a thing. And it frustrates me and saddens me that this is something that I know is there, and I recognize as being part of this group of people, that it does feel like this, like there's this bubbling surface that we're all in because we're doing this fake niceness and uplifting, but it's not really, because we're more concerned about actually just uplifting ourselves.
Right.
And it's unfortunate.
Well, that's like, people have talked about, we need to start the book soon. We're going so far off.
I'm so
but
sorry.
Like, no, we're so fine. But like, also, I don't know. I've looked at stuff, like I'm on TikTok of a lot of like Black creators, and they talk about like the failure of white women to become communities because we never know what to ask for. And a lot of the stuff we have, like, it's based on walking through a door and then shutting it behind us and saying we earned the right to be here, instead of saying like, hey, I need to make sure I'm uplifting people in ways that are unique to women and not based on patriarchy, because a lot of white women haven't undone what they what they've had internally done to them via the patriarchy, where it's like,
I was just going to mention that, like, no one is saying that white women have to endure nothing, because Hannah, you and I both have been subject to countless sexist remarks and sexism throughout our lives. Like, I deal with it all the time. And it's not to say that those are things that are okay and that we should have to deal with, but it also is not saying that just because we are able to like move on or like get through things like that we should shut the door behind us.
Right.
Like, no.
And so I think sometimes it's just like we do center ourselves. We do make
Yes.
ourselves the main character because that is what we are taught. And like it's important to decenter that and make sure that we are uplifting voices that are not our own and having criticism for the spaces that we are in when it is valid criticism. So it's hard because I think, you know, people don't do that enough.
No.
But as two white women who just went on a tangent,
we are the problem. And you know what? We're laughing about this and stuff, but a lot of this, I think if people haven't really unpacked a lot of these thoughts, it's worth it to follow creators of color, follow Indigenous people, follow Black people, follow Black creators. It is definitely worth it to find out information from them. Do not go to us to Hannah and I to find information about this. We are two white women who are still on journeys ourselves. I'm definitely not very far along my journey. I'm still unlearning so many things, but we're trying, and we want other people to try too, because we want this to be a good community. Like we want Instagram and the book community and the podcasting community to be a good community for all people. And we want, I think on a broader aspect, you and I just want the world to be better.
Yes.
So it's definitely one of those things, like take this with a grain of salt because we are two white women, but please like think about some of these things and try to reach out and find other creators too.
Right. Like, yeah, we can only go so far. We can only go so far. Reach out to other creators, learn, and don't ask them for free labor, but just
you can do it yourself. Like do the work yourself, but still learn and support them.
Yes, learn and support, and do not ask them for free labor. Those are our big messaging for the day.
Yeah, like you can still donate and do things and support people. You do not have to be like, hey, can you tell me specifically in a DM all the things that I need to do? Like,
do you tell me what books are perfect for thrillers? It's like you can Google, you can look out.
How about you just use this little search engine we all know of?
Yeah,
like people.
There are many resources that people have already put out. You don't need to ask people specifically for that. That's not what we're asking you for, but we are asking everyone to do better, including ourselves. So
yes. With that said, we will get into Jade War,
a book about sexism.
Kind of.
Yeah. So a little bit of content warnings for this portion of the novel. I just want to drop them in at the beginning. There are discussions of rape and abortion happening in this section of the novel.
Sexual abuse as well.
Sexual abuse. Oh yes. Sexual abuse, rape, abortion, like there's
violence.
Very much so. There's a violence overcap for this entire book. This one specifically, I just wanted to touch on those since we will be discussing them in depth if that's not something you're in the mood to listen to. Also racism, because yes.
If these are things you're not feeling it at the moment, you can't handle it at the moment, that's fine. Just we'll see you at the beginning of the next episode.
Yep, sounds good. Talk to you guys later. But we start in Andon's POV as Corey is asking him if he wants to play relay ball with all the men of similar age in their teens. We see Andon playing relay ball with them, and he finds out like he's one of the better players because it's not
he's good.
Of course he's good. Well, it's also because it's not like a main sport in Espedia. Like they're focused on other sports, and this is like a very Kekanese type game, and so he has played it more, so he has better experience. But he's also like I'm not that good, I'm just better than everyone else here. But Corey is the best player because of course he is.
He's amazing at everything.
Andon is also like, he doesn't seem like he's part of the Pillars family. Like he cares less about what his father does. He's pretty chill. And it's like, Andon, you didn't seem like part of the Pillar family. Like,
and that's kind of interesting to me too, because it's like, to me, it makes total sense that when you're the son of the family that has immigrated here, that he would be maybe less connected to the culture of their country than and Andon doesn't seem to be able to grasp it. But like you said, Andon is also the one that was like, I don't really feel that connected to this.
Connected. I'm kind of out of it, but like we also, this is like the biggest section of the book where it's like Pillar is an honorary title here. It's not a real thing.
Yeah.
They go into that quite a bit.
But then you find out later, it kind of is real.
It is, yeah. But one night it's super rainy and slushy, so they have to go to what they call the Grudge Hall. Andon's like, it's just the community center, and he doesn't think much of the center. It appears to have like not much going on, just like little things like elderly people hanging out, a training room, etc. But Corey is like, no, it's the basement we care about. They go around back and there's a long line of people waiting to get in. The door person doesn't think Andon is Kekanese, but Corey assures him that he belongs there more than any of them. They go downstairs and it's a huge food hall serving traditional Kekanese food, and so many good food descriptions here. Read it because it sounds delicious. It makes me hungry. Andon is overwhelmed, but he sees cockfighting going on and gambling. We see the pillar and the horn. Ron is there, Roan. And Roan assures Andon that they fixed the issue he had in the previous section. And Andon's like, good, I was worried about it, even though I didn't mention it until I just saw you right now. Andon also finds out this is where they train the green bones when it's fixed upright. There is suddenly a clean blade fight going on down there, which is outlawed in Espania, but happens in this area where they get like their own like version of Kekanese culture. It doesn't go all the way to like killing. The horn steps in very quick, or the pillar steps in very quickly, and he's like, do you concede? Like, raise your hand, do it right now, don't die.
But it's one of those things where I feel like Andon is almost looking at this, watching it, and it would be similar to us like watching WWE, where we're like, this is such staged fighting, where it's just like, okay, come on. There were no stakes here. Everyone was gonna be fine. The fact that everyone's like, it's like, like, really?
So Andon is kind of like, oh, this is kind of like kick on, but it's not really. There ends up being duels between the people wearing green, and Andon notices like they're very unskilled. But like even the highest skilled one, he's like, well, that would be like not acceptable in kick on, but he understands like they have to train themselves. It's different here. Officers come in and they have to be paid off to look the other way. The Ducks pull in money from the community, and we find out that Andon Andon also like turns into a little bit of like, oh my gosh, police officers are bad here.
It's like, which here's the thing, and when I'm like reading from the Jade City, like Janloon, we're in Kikon, like I feel like they totally disregard police officers because they're like, we are the law.
Exactly. They're like, we'll murder someone on the streets, it doesn't matter. And like, and it's like, I would get a police officer to intervene, and it's like, no, you wouldn't.
You totally just go above the law. Like, you would never worry about like, oh, let's call the cops. Like, no, you would not worry about that.
But he also,
the fact that he's so concerned about the cops in this, I'm like, what?
And then he's also very much just like, oh, they just want to take from themselves and they don't care about us. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of how it works here. You guys are considered lower class. Racism, Andon, come on.
Yes.
But Doc is like, hey, Corey, you should probably take Andon back because his family is probably getting worried about him. And Corey makes a move on Andon, even though he was just with girls. And Andon's like, I thought you liked women. And it's like, well, bisexual erasure, Andon.
Like, Andon, what are you thinking?
They fool around a bit, and Corey has Andon touch his green, not a euphemism. And he's like, I knew you definitely like could have touched green. And Andon's like, yeah, I was trained with Jade, and I had to murder someone, actually a few men. And Corey's like, oh, you don't want to be a killer. And Andon is like, that's a stupid thing to say. Of course I don't mind killing people. And he's like, I just don't want to enjoy it. And Corey's like, you're not like the other boys.
At first, when I was reading this and it got to that point where he like touched the jade, I was like, if this is just some kind of ploy where he was just gonna be like, ha!
I know, I was gonna be so mad.
I was gonna be so upset if that's what it was. I'm like, oh, thank God it didn't go that way. But I was like, this is gonna really upset me if this is how it happens.
He also finds out that they call themselves the Cuspies for Espenian Kekanese people. And Corey realizes Andon is nervous, and so he says he will slow down after not slowing down at all.
Right.
Like he slows down after the fact. So we cut on over to Barrow, who is not long for this world. Maybe, who knows?
I'm unsure.
I know, I'm so unsure at this point. But he's helping the Uiwan people dig out Jade. He must have agreed to the guy helping out the guy in the last section. We find out that the people are digging for Jade, and they're often like incredibly high on shine. So they have a way to test later and see if it's Jade and usable, and then the person will get paid for it. Moot doesn't want to be doing this. It's kind of bad work and it's dangerous. He wants to be practicing to kill the Mikes. And Barrow's like, but more Jade. And Moot's like, why do we need more? And Barrow is Barrow. So he's like, well, I need the most Jade.
It's like so disheartening though, because he had made promises to Moot and he's so invested in like going after the Mikes, and Barrow is such a dick about it, and is just like, you idiot, we're not gonna go after them. We're only doing this. It's like, what?
Moot's own dad was like, hey, that kid sucks, he might be a sociopath, and Moot like took so long to get around to like,
he looks up to him,
sociopath.
And it's just like, what is wrong with you?
Your dad told you only care about your father. Why didn't you listen to him? They suddenly feel Greenbones coming and they try to flee, but the Greenbones snuck up on them really quickly and they're too fast, even with Barrow sort of knowing what he's doing with Jade. They call them the New Greens. It's the mountain clan. The horn of the mountain is there. And Moot is like, this is your fault, Barrow. And we realize he's kind of getting sick of him finally. But now Swen finds out that Zapuño is sending Keefe with Jade and Shine to look over the scavengers and not his own people because like he doesn't want to waste them anymore. And Barrow literally admits he took his green from Lan, and they all laugh and don't believe him. And I'm like, now Swen is kind of like, yeah, this is Gaunt Ash's fault because like he picked up these new greens, gave them Jade, got them hooked on Shine, and now they're like running around with no one to like tell them what to do. So of course they're going to go over to Zapuño. And then the horn offers to buy Sordayo, who is the guy who hired Barrow, because he's about to start losing money and it will give him new career options. We find out that now Swen is great at perception. He can like detect if someone's lying. And he goes up to Barrow and he's like, dude, I can tell you believe you won this from Kowloon. So like, you're not long for this world and you will hope I killed you one day, but like, I'm going to leave you here.
I really wish we would have just done one.
Like, well, someone killed Barrow. Someone might kill Barrow, Laura. So we cut on over to Shay, who's headed to Hilo's residence. He's taking care of Nico in the morning. He says that Wen is now pretty much just mommy as a character.
She's just continually pregnant.
She's like, so pregnant all the time. It's like, just let the woman take a break.
She just had a baby
already. She got a new one. Yeah. They head out in an unmarked car and Shay judges Hilo for murdering Nico's mother. And Hilo's like, would you rather we not have Nico? Then shut up. But like, also,
and he hasn't like revealed the whole thing. Like Shay just pretty much knows. She's like, yeah, you killed her. And that wasn't right. Ani. Like we had okay relationship. Like he was not that bad. Have wanted
he
would have been
all.
So upset by this. Like he loved her. And
he's like, would you rather we not have Nico? And it's like, two things could be true at once, Hilo. Like she could definitely love Nico and still be like, well, I still didn't want her murdered.
I still want to murder his mother.
Right. But we find out that they're going on a boat ride with the Vans, who it's called the Inheritance, the boat, because it's got to be on the nose. The rich family that they discussed previously. We also find out that they offered, like the Vans are kind of like, hey, you didn't try to bribe us yet. You tried to bribe the other people like 4 months ago, because we find out that they offered tuition free to the Coben boy to come to call the Call Academy, and they gave flowers to the Yue family to like when the weatherman got instituted, who like sent it back, and the Coben boy like said no because they would definitely die if they accepted that.
They're basically trying to make a move on any of the possible.
But they're also trying to just throw the Van Sendo off to be like, hey, we thought the other ones were going to be better, right, but now we're coming to you. And like, it's all a ploy.
They're making appeals to a bunch of people that could possibly succeed as the pillar of the mountain clan.
But they also knew that the Vens would be like the most reasonable, so they waited on them to like kind of make it more enticing by like offering
they're the
to the other
target, really.
Yeah. So Hilo's like, well, we just want to be on good terms with the next mountain leader. And Van Sendo is a huge piece of absolute garbage. They go out on his boat and he's like, women in power. Ew. Sorry, Shay. LOL.
Well, and he's like, people don't trust Mara because she had no children. But you know what? If she would have, then we still would have hated her. Because you can't be an effective pregnant woman.
And
like what?
And it's fine that you're like the weatherman, but if you were the pillar, like we can't trust the spine of the families to be a woman. What if she gets her period?
Yeah, exactly. What? A period?
Those are definitely direct quotes.
Yeah, Hannah remembers these things exactly. Remember?
What if she gets her period?
Title of the episode.
He doesn't think Aimada has a succession plan. And there is some discussion of how bad it was when the mountain like went into bed with criminals and had a lot of public shame brought on them. Like, so that was ineffective of Aimada, sure, but also Vanzendo, you suck. Shay is shocked he's so open about hating women and but also knows that there's a lot of power and money in the van. So she understands why I couldn't get rid of them because like it would just cause too much strife.
I think it's also like a thing too where Shay's like baffled that sexism still exists when women are in power, and
also perpetuates it, just like we were talking
exactly. About. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, you don't understand this? Okay, yeah, you're living it.
And so she they also realize that he wants Ven Haku, his oldest son, to be the pillar, who's like a huge party boy and is a lot like Hilo of yesteryear. They agree to help on the business side of things if like to become a little bit more friendly to the mountain, if they had more friendly leadership in the mountain, and then we'll begin trying to stage a coup slowly. It's kind of like agreed upon. Mm-hmm. And they leave after Shay is like, we need to go now. Okay, thanks, bye. Like, he's like, let's go around the waters. And she's like, let's not be together anymore. And then she's like, wow, he is super conceited and insufferable. And Hilo is like playfully bantering with her about like, well, does it make you feel sorry for Ait? And it reminds her of when they were kids. And he notes that they will need a weak pillar in the mountain clan to make sure that No Peak wins out. And she says she'll try to get him more support like she promised. We cut on over to Mike Ken, who's on a mission. He finds a boat traveling in the waters with lots of hired men watching it. And we find out that the Uiwans have been transporting Jade to the Yucatanians through sewing Jade into fake clothing. We also find out that Ken is probably going to propose to his girlfriend. What a background story that like just comes up all the time.
It was mentioned in the first section, like when I think was like, I'm so glad that I hooked him up with Lena. Like he really needed a girlfriend.
I'm so happy I have a girlfriend. And now like it's just showing the like it's the funniest like little background story showing the passage of time, because like all of a sudden it's like, oh, I have a girlfriend. Oh, we're getting engaged. Oh, we're married. It's like well, and in the background.
Honestly, like anytime she's mentioned, it's just like one of those things where I don't know if this is just to like humanize him, so we're not just like the mics are just like terrifying men who feel like it's totally fine to just kill people nonstop. But I don't know if it's just meant to humanize him, but like whenever she comes in and it's like Ken's just like staring at her, and then they're like, "Come on, guy, wake up!" I'm like.
It's kind of like that episode of How I Met Your Mother where it shows like a couple getting engaged and married and like turning old in the same scene. I feel like that's
Ken. Yes. That's actually a perfect comparison.
He also recognizes that a few of the Barookins who have been helping Uiwa are like weak-willed, like Keikanese people, and he's like, well, that happens when you're like beaten down in a place like Shotar. So it actually shows he's a little bit more understanding of the world than the Calls do, honestly. Like he seems to understand what people's motivations are. We also find out that the Espinians have been bombing Aitmata's locations after Shay gave them the information. She's becoming more bold and going after the mountain, like really bold. And Woon points out that she's planning to tell these Espinians about the Uiwan cargo ships heading for Ugatan. And this would likely force the Uiwans to take care of Zapuño in her mind, like the police force to take care of Zapuño as a crime boss. And Woon points out she has to be more careful because she's like not being careful at all. And it's going to bite her in the butt literally in this chapter. Yeah. And he's like, the Espinians only have interest in themselves. They want to stop Jade and Shine production because they want it all. And they've been like on their soil using their gambling facilities. And they're like, there's been high civilian casualties in Urotako, and Keikan is being blamed for it. Like, this is really bad. It looks bad that they're getting into bed too much with them. And he's also like, you're giving them more leverage by giving them these like things. They could use it against us. And she's like, well, you're right in some sense of the word, but you're also wrong because like they see everything as a business deal. So if we give them another treat, they will hate being indebted to us. And so they're more likely to give me exactly what I'm asking for. And because like now they owe me twice. And he's like, okay, whatever, boss. I'm still in love with you. Bye.
I'm glad you didn't quit.
She has dinner with Morrow and Hilo and Wen, and I literally forgot they were together in the start of the beginning portion when I was writing my notes. I was like, they're still together.
I'm not sold on this couple. I
a
just
terrible couple. I hate them so much. She
yeah.
has the most like fuckboy relationships I've ever seen. I don't understand how she picks Ben. Jade, like,
We'll get there because
standards.
this relationship.
Yeah.
But
It's just unrealistic that like he wouldn't understand that she doesn't probably want to be a mom. Like it's shocking. But anyway, Morrow does mostly good with Hilo, but he also speaks out against an SN1 prohibition, clean blade dueling,
because
he's on Jade Alliance.
He's a political science teacher
Yeah.
at a college, so obviously he's going to have political opinions, and
right.
of course he's someone who cannot keep it under control at a party with like a super opinionated, high-ranking clans person.
And
Hilo is someone
like
who is such an antagonist about this kind of thing, and
oh, and he was also like, do you want to go into politics? And he's like, I don't think I can because I'm banging your sister.
and Hilo's like, it'd be good for us to have somebody on the inside.
And
if
he's
you
like,
really
I
want to
wouldn't
consider
do that.
we'll totally back you. And he's like, I really think that we should have people who are not really connected to the clan at all in politics. And Hilo's like, you kidding me, bro? Like, why would we have that? We definitely want all of our people in there.
He also thinks that Jade should be like more economic and like supply demand, and the KJA constricts this. Hilo looks at him strange, and Shay immediately like shuts the conversation down and like boldly lies for both of them, being like, Mara's just super devil's advocate. Like he can make you believe a black cat was white. And Hilo's like, doesn't change the color of the cat. And it's like Mara stops arguing because he's like, oh, I messed up because I was talking to a political official pretty much. He leaves, and Hilo and Wen talk with Shay. Hilo jokes about Wen's trips to the sauna, and then Wen leaves. Hilo says he approves of Morrow, and Shay's like, I didn't ask for that. And he's like, well, at least he's Kekanese.
At least he's not Gerald.
At least he's not Gerald. He's like, well, it won't be an issue in the papers if he's Kekanese. Like, this will look good on the clan. And she is like the biggest hypocrite, where she's always like, we have to do exactly what the clan needs, but also I want to break it, and I don't want approval, and I just want to live my life. And it's
one
like
of those things where she's like, no one can know Morrow's backstory with the
and it's like then break up with him. Like, you need to be pragmatic about this. Like,
and then at the same time, she just like, he's confessing his love to her all the time, and she's just like, but do I?
I know. And then Hilo's like, do you love him? And she's like, I don't know. And he's like, well, if you don't know, then you don't. But she's like, well, I just don't have enough time with him. She's dealing with all the business and politics side.
Excuses. You're sneaking out all the time to see him. Like,
well, and Hilo's like got his fingers in all of Ken's business. So it's like, well, then talk to your brother about how he needs to take more control.
Right.
He does tell Shay that she needs to ask permission to get married. She's upset. And he's like, I did it with Lon. And she's like, well, what would have happened if Lon said no? And also Hilo sucks at this part because he's like, well, that wasn't a possibility. He didn't.
Well, and that's the thing too, where it's just like, I think Hilo has like this picture in his mind that he did everything through the right channels, and obviously Lon approved. And it's like we as readers know that Lon was actually like pretty back and forth on this, was really unsure if he should give him his approval, but was like basically came to the conclusion, if I don't give him his approval, he's just gonna go and do it anyways,
or like be worse for the like clan. And that's the thing, is like Hilo believes in tradition because it always works for Hilo. Like, because he is a man and in a position of power, of course the tradition works to his benefit. So he cannot understand when other people do not want to follow tradition because it doesn't work to their benefit. Like, it only works for Hilo, and he throws a temper tantrum every time someone breaks away from that because it's not working for them. So yeah, it's
one of those things too, where it's like, if he knew the whole story with Morrow, would he be
he wouldn't
receptive to this? He would
be
only
throwing
sees a certain
fit
person
in the mansion.
Yeah. And so it's like, Hilo, you don't really get it.
He states that Woon asked permission, so Woon is engaged now, and she feels a bit weird because he asked her to marry a woman.
He's engaged? Like, what?
Well, he also asked permission like literally right after he confessed his love to Shay. So that's fun for that woman. I don't feel bad for her at all. Yes, I do.
I feel terrible.
But he also points out, again, this is like Hilo being like, I worked within the confines of the clan, but also I only worked when it was benefiting me. Because he's like, look, I made sure the Makes got every opportunity, and now they're in positions of power. And it's like, because you put them there. People don't like them in that position. You just assume they do. And the Makes know that like not everyone likes them there. And he's like, but you need to do the same for Morrow, which is also
it's
he's
kind of true,
and
but
it's true, but it's for all the wrong reasons.
yeah,
Like
he goes about it the wrong way, where it's like, you do this, but also in a different way.
Right. I don't know. He asks about Andy and she points out that he's struggling a bit. And she talks about the informal clan, like the pillar and horn there. And Hilo thinks it makes sense that Kekanese would do that because green can't be easily rubbed away. The next morning, Shay finds out that Aitmata leaked to the press about her time as an Espedian spy. And it's like, Shay, how did you not see this coming?
Of course she was going to do that.
She's shocked and she's like shaking in anger. And I'm like, yeah, you poked the bear and you didn't have a plan of action to deal with the fact that you were a foreign spy.
Of course she was going to come up with some kind of campaign to make you look bad.
Like, also, come on, hire a press secretary. Like, you need to have someone in power who is only with communication side of things. How do you guys not have that already? Like, you guys just think you're above it all, don't you?
They need like Melissa McCarthy on SNL portraying what's his name, former press secretary.
Yes, exactly.
Amazing.
She's like, we need to issue a statement immediately, and it's like, well, that won't help. So we travel back on over to Ken and Hilo, like pretty much very soon after that all happened. And they talk about travel plans and finding the cargo ships, like 3 this month with Jade hiding. But they note that like there's not a ton of Jade, but it's still annoying. Ken accidentally threw a man overboard in that chapter. I forgot to mention.
Oh yeah.
And
he's like, oh crap, his Jade.
I can't take that Jade. And so Hilo's like, here's some Jade to make up for it. From the stolen like garments. And he's like, don't worry, it's a wedding gift because they're now getting married. Again, they're just having all this like plot.
And it's an early wedding gift because Hilo's a generous friend and we'll give more wedding gifts later, obviously.
Tar comes in. We found out the mountain is still helping them on the raids, which is good. And then a couple comes in. Again, trigger warnings. They tell Hilo that their 16-year-old daughter was raped by an Espedian soldier and they would like vengeance. Hilo knows that the soldiers are being taken care of on their own base. They took them off of Kekon, so they can't be touched. The family is super upset, saying that like the Espedians only sentenced them in civil court and not criminal. And they only offered them money to take care of this, but like they want vengeance. They want actual retribution. And they feel like No Peak can't stand up to the Espedians right now. And Hilo's like, well, we can't do everything. Just take the money. It will help in the long run. And we'll wait to seek out justice. We're not saying never. We're just saying we can't do it right now. It is noticed that Hilo started shutting down gambling and sex work houses in this book. And he's sending them towards the mountain to deal with. So he's just pushing off the problem onto other people. Cool. And then Hammy comes in with Hammy, the master luck bringer under Shay, and he has 3 men with him who want Hilo to replace Shay due to the Espedian ties.
This is annoying to me.
Yeah, she's getting embarrassed in the paper all the time, and they even talk to Gerald.
Yeah, Gerald's face is in the paper, like smiling. Like, it's me, Gerald.
It's me, Gerald. I'm back. And then they think it will hurt the business. Hilo kind of shuts it down, but he also asks Hemi what his thoughts are on Shay. And he's like, well, I had to bring these people to talk to you because like they're asking to replace the weatherman, which is your job. You have to listen to this stuff. And like, this is your specific decision-making power. So I did what I had to do. This is a practical decision. It's bad for us what happens. We're not saying she can't work here anymore, but like she could be in a less visible role. And like, well, and then asked him his opinion in front of all these men. And then it's like, how dare you bring it up in front of all these men? And it's like, well, you just wanted this to work for you and it didn't. So whatever.
My thing is, I am kind of more in the camp of Hilo in this situation, because to me, this is so shitty of Hami to be like this. And I do think in this moment, like Hilo does kind of stand up for Shay in a way that he needed to. And he shows his support of her. And he's kind of like, look, that was a long time ago. I trust her. You guys should trust her. And they're like, yeah, but people are calling her a whore. And he's like, who's calling her that? Tell me.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, people are. And he's like,
some people,
give me names because I will literally kill them. Right. Who is it? And they're just like, well, like we don't want to say who, but it's definitely some people. Nobody here, but people were saying it. And it's like, yeah, obviously you guys were saying it. And the way that he confronts then Hami and is like, what's the deal here? Why do you not want her to be the weatherman? Like, I respect your opinion, but I need to know like what's going on. And he's just like, well, I and he kind of wants to play both sides of it too.
He
And
does.
it's like, you can't.
I just think he should have had them leave the room before he like shut Hami down and like,
you know
like,
what? I
hey,
kind of
listen.
appreciated the way that he did that to him because it was putting Hilo in a situation like that as well.
That's fair.
So it's kind of like, you know what? Tit for tat. Like, here we are.
So he does do exactly what Laura says. And then he like kind of kicks them all out of his office and he's like, Shay's not going anywhere. And then he says he has to go call her. We come on over to Barrow, who tells Soradayo, who's the man who hired him, about the request from the mountain to like give him a different career. They are getting blood out on the Uiwan side. Mu is like, let's go after the Mikes. And Barrow admits he doesn't give a shit about them. And he does apologize later, but it's too late because Mu is sick of him.
He's at the point where he's like, you don't want to do this. You don't want to help me.
Soradayo tries to get them into some whispered name work, which is like, did Hami whisper Shay's name? Because I don't trust Hami in any of this, but who knows? But Barrow is like, nope, I don't get into that green bone stuff anymore. It's too messy. I'm not doing this. I'm not trying my luck twice. And Moo's like, I could have done it. And Soradayo is like, yeah, haha, sure. I'll ask other people. We got on over to Shay, who's doing her job. She has Enki, the lantern man from the previous installment, like section of this. They're asking for a loan to put into real estate in Espinia in Port Massey. She says they will loan the capital for the whole thing. He only wants to own a portion. And she's like, no, I am trying to get more. I'm trying to get more real estate into Espinia and to get ties, and this is the perfect way to do this. She also says that she has plans to send children from Call Academy to Espinia, like Andon, and have them promise to work for the weatherman for 3 years after they get an Espinian education. Because he was like, well, won't they just want to stay in Espinia? And she's like, well, there are ways of like making sure they can get the work they want and to make sure that they're paying the clan back. But this will benefit No Peak, but to get her more people in Espinia and understanding business side and kind of like what Hilo has been telling her to do all along, which is like, if you want people under you who are strong, then build that. Like, if we haven't done it before, you need to figure out how to do it. And Enki is like, okay, I'll do that. So he leaves. Woon comes in and he senses she's upset. However, the Espinians are assisting them more now, so that's helpful. Maro is like calling Che and being like very upset for her, but she's kind of brushing him off more than usual. And we find out it is because she is pregnant. She walks around thinking about her options right now because she understands that as the weatherman, she cannot have a baby. Lots of people are barely trusting her right now, and she'll be pushed.
And unfortunately, like more sexism. Like she realizes it at this point where she's just like, if I'm pregnant, I will lose any respect that I have. People will think I'm completely ineffective, and then I'll actually have to like be a mother and take time to do things.
And it's a luxury that, like, to her, honestly, to be able to have a baby. And she can't just be like Wen, who takes time off to have a child. She needs to be there all the time. And she's just like, and she also recognizes like she can't be lucky the way Hilo is, where he can just have babies whenever he wants and be a little bit absent and still be seen as a good dad. So she goes and she prays, and we cut on over to Wen taking Shay to the clinic to get an abortion. Shay decides to go in alone. I actually think that this is a very good woman moment, because as a woman who thinks that I can do anything, women are often taught that we have to do a lot of things in isolation, because a lot of things we do are cloaked in shame. Like even having a baby is shameful in a lot of ways. Like Shay talks about it, like a lot of crap with women is shameful. And so we are taught like you have to be able to do it alone. You have to be strong enough. And so Shay is like, I'll go in, I'll terminate the pregnancy on my own. And Wen is like, no, I'm coming in with you. Women don't have to do this alone. This is like not going to happen. And she's super supportive during the surgery and everything. And later in the car also gets a little bit shitty to Shay. Like I was like, you didn't have to say this right now. You could have been a little bit more of a comfort, because she's like, I always worried you'd be selfish. Like you went to Expedia, that was selfish. You do whatever you want to do, that's selfish. And she's like, if you had kept the baby and like let yourself like not be fully for No Peak, I would have never forgiven you. And I'm like, well, that sucks to hear. It's astute because that is how women are treated, but also it's frustrating because like women shouldn't have to be put in that position.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I didn't love that, but I did love that it is very accurate in the way women and pregnancy is viewed. So that sucks.
I did think though that it was a good. I'm not gonna lie. I'm trying to find the highlight of this, and that I had highlighted the conversation that Shay and Wen had.
Yeah, I did love that at the end. Shay said, "I thought you would judge me.
I thought
for
you would judge
terminating
me
my
for
pregnancy, because you're a mother." And Wen was like, "I would never judge you. I think what you did, like, we serve the clan the way that we're both suited. Like, I can have
Yes.
babies to serve the clan, and you can decide to do this to serve the clan."
Yeah,
so
here
I
we
did.
go. I found it. She
I
said, you
liked
could have
that
resigned
button.
your position to marry your boyfriend and have a child, and it would have created a miserable scandal, but then you would have been free to live an easier life. But instead, you're sacrificing all this for the clan.
Right.
And we couldn't do this without you.
I just didn't love when she called it a selfish choice, where I was like, nope, that's not selfish.
No.
Like, that is a deeply personal choice. And I wish Wen had an understanding of the fact that, like, but I also think Wen's character is someone who is very self-sacrificing. So it makes sense that she would see this view as a selfish view. I just hated that she put that little button on it, but I did love, I think like it could be a beautiful conversation.
Too, that she's like, but you have children. Like, how can you think that this is a okay thing? And she's like, we all serve the clan in the way that we're best suited.
And I do love the fact that she's like, a huge part of this is like, Ait is very alone, Ait Mata.
And she's like, we have to be strong together.
Yes. And I did love that was the finishing button on this. So
yeah.
We also have like Shay kind of remembering, this is a very big moment. So she does remember like the night before she left for Espinia, and Lan came to take her out to dinner. He made sure it was traditional Kekanese food. And he's like, you're not going to get this. And he also notes that like, he's like, I just don't want you to be lonely. Like, I know you're about to be very alone. And she's like, I'll have Gerald. And Lan is like, well, we're always alone with our decisions, which I thought was a very beautiful moment. And he's like, you're about to go to a place that doesn't see you as something powerful and strong. You are going to be like out alone in the world in a very different view than you've grown up in. And he's like, but you get to define yourself right now. And that's beautiful. And she's like, well, I can take care of myself. And he's like, yes, you can. And so it shows like a very supportive, like a good juxtaposition where like Lan was very much like, you're the youngest, you're in a place of power, but you're about to go out and do this. And like, that's beautiful. So make sure you understand that. So, and then we cut on over to Heroes Day. It's not long after that scene happened with the abortion, and Shay decides to stay behind. But Heroes Day is a place where you meet the prince. It's like very official. And then the clans get to make speeches. Hilo heads over. He says hello to the prince, who's like a glorified position. And then Ait speaks first, and she decides to use her speech to go against Shay and talk about her Espinian ties and like a huge, like, you can't trust people outside of Kagon. And like,
I was going to say, she basically makes it like this big speech about how like, here's the thing. I believe that we should be concerned about our country and not worrying about things outside. I didn't
sell illegal drugs in the last book. Don't worry about that. Like, hey, no mind.
I'm very concerned about our nationalism. And she's like, you know who is not? That whore over there. But that's basically the way and what she says.
Laura doesn't use certain words, so like when I hear her say them, it's funnier. And her saying that whore over there is one of the funniest things I've ever heard.
That is exactly how I pictured it, though. Like her just like standing up there, and even like reading this, I'm literally becoming shocked because I'm like, what in the world? And I'm like, it's one of those things where like similar to like the United States political climate, I'm just like reading this, and I'm like, how can believe this?
I know. Well, because they're just regular people and they are not as involved in politics. But it's very funny because Hilo's like, how do I deal with this? I had a stupid speech prepared and now I have to follow this and I have to keep calm and collected because it's what Shay would want. I really want to punch this woman in the face.
People can like feel his energy, like his aura, and they're like, holy crap, this is gonna be so bad.
So Shay suddenly appears and Hilo's like, I thought you decided to stay home. And she was like, yeah, I decided I couldn't do that. And she walks up and she says, Ait Mata, you've called me a whore enough. I challenge you to a clean blade.
She's like, you have
in honor
tried
of
to
my
discredit
name.
me so many times. I'm sick of it. Let's duel.
Let's duel. So she is going to duel with Ait Mata. And this brings us to the second interlude, but we're not stopping here, guys. We're powering through.
We're going.
But we discussed the Three Crowns era and the self-destruction of the Junto royal line. Two conquering kingdoms wanted peaceful relations by exchanging royal children throughout their lifetime, and one of them had to offer a daughter, the John princess, and she fell in love with the eldest prince of the other province, and she pushed him to rule all of Kakon. Her brother was a very sickly creature and had a hard time fighting, and she was kind of trained in Greenbone, so she was like a very demanding warrior. This strife continued for a very long time, and it was like a very negative view of the time, but it's also like one of the biggest pieces of media that came out was like the strife and like the Romeo and Juliet type love story that occurred. And also the vilification of a woman because she wanted to be in power, fun things. We cut on over back to Shay. She's definitely not ready for a fight. She's kind of like, I haven't had enough training. I've been a weatherman.
I haven't been training. I've been just sitting in an office. Holy crap.
It's going to kill me. That's going to happen.
But then she's also just like, well, maybe she hasn't been training either.
Probably not, but maybe also. We know in the last book, like Ite trains quite a bit from Andon's perspective. So she also notes that like by doing this, she's taking care of things the Greenbone way, and it does stand for something, especially with what Shay's been besmirched for, which is not being Greenbone enough. We also see like a difference between women and men fighting. I did enjoy the scene from like Shay is much more calculating, where she's like, I can't wear all my jade because if I lose, then I'd have to start from square one, and I can't do that. Like, you have to sacrifice your jade. You have to figure out what of it is enough to be powerful enough, but what kind of like, what do I need to rely on for my own personal body? And I did enjoy reading that, like a little bit more calculating of like just brute force versus like a more understanding of how you need to fight and do it effectively.
It should also be noted going into this fight that she has not told her professor boyfriend about this, because she's like, he is noted for not participating in duels. He's like, we're above violence. And Shay's like, well, I cannot tell the non-violent professor that I'm dating that I challenged someone to a duel.
It's on all the newspapers, and like there are a ton of people showing up to see this because like it's pretty unique to see two women Greenbones fighting
of this high standing as well.
And so she like notes that this will end a lot of issues, and Hila's pissed at her, and she's like, dude, like I had to do it this way because she's saying like, we're not Greenbone enough. This is a very old traditional view of things, and it will stop a lot of arguments. And he's like, it won't stop it if you're dead.
Well, and beyond just like her being green enough, it's just one of those things where she's like, this is reflecting poorly on our clan. And if I don't do something to stand up for our clan, it gives us all a bad image, and she's going to be able to continue to use this against us and break us down this way. This is how she's getting us. She's bringing the war inside, is what she's doing.
Well, and so we also find out that like Hila doesn't really trust Shay, so he sends like all these Greenbones to every mountain area to show that if Shay loses and dies, the mountain won't be harmed. And she's like, that's a dirty blade. Like, it's not in the traditional sense. And he's like, okay, there's worse things that can happen, Shay. And he's like, we need to deal a blow really fast if you die, because you're very important.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, you're supposed to honor the clean blade tradition, which is like, they won't retaliate. And he's basically like, if you die, we will cause an all-out war, and we will take as many people down as we can. Yeah. And she's like, holy shit, like I have to win or this will be terrible.
So the fight begins. Ite is obviously like stronger than Shay, but Ite is just kind of older, so she's not as fast or as nimble as Shay.
What did they say? She's like 12 years older or something?
Yeah, like she's like Shay is like in her 20s, but like Ite's in her 40s, and so there is just like a natural like Shay is faster and a little bit like has a little bit more endurance naturally.
Yeah, and she gets a couple good moves in, and then she like takes off Aitmata's ear, and people are like, holy crap.
That's a like huge blow, because an ear is incredibly symbolic in Keefe culture. So
they're like, now she's unlucky. And it's one of those deals where the people watching are kind of like thinking, oh my gosh, she might actually stand a chance because she's got youth to her advantage and she's thrown her off guard.
Well, and I definitely thought she could just go in and beat Shay up, and didn't realize like Shay has some power behind her. But Ite is able to get the upper hand, and she does stab Shay. Shay concedes really quickly, and Ite almost ignores it, but she knows there's too many people watching. There are too many fists around, and like she would start all out war. So she walks up and tells Shay, this is my favorite because Ite is also a hypocrite, but we only see her sometimes. So I'm more amused by her and not as frustrated. But she was like, well, I can't kill her,
but I am going to blame it on something else that isn't this fight. I didn't get it over my head. She like walks up to her and she's
I
like,
had complete control of the entire situation.
yeah. I was always in control and I knew this was going to happen. So she walks
planned this.
And she tells Shay that she once told Shay that Shay would see Ike put their clan into ruins, and so she won't kill her right now. And it's like, that's not why, but okay.
No.
She takes off Shay's
because
necklace.
She backed you into a corner.
Right. And Shay passes out like through the loss of Jade and blood.
She's stabbed like right through the middle of her torso.
Right.
And she knows, like, Shay's in that moment, she's like knowing that she's either gonna die or she needs to move quickly so she concedes. And she's like, okay, I know if I do this, like, I'm gonna have to look around and be like, here's my situation. Like, I can either accept this concession, which is a noble thing to do, because if you were to kill someone after they concede, then that looks very bad. And for somebody who just gave a speech about how noble they are, that would look even worse for you to kill somebody after this. And there's going to be an all-out war here. Or you can go ahead and kill me like you want to. So it's a really tense moment, but it's pretty cool. And I did kind of like it, but at the same time, I was really kind of hoping that Shay would have come out on top.
I know it would have been cool if she did, but I get it. Imada's a good big bad. So Shay's out for like 12 days. Rune offers to make her a new choker from the clan basement,
like their reserves.
And she's like, no, this was a symbol. Like, it would make me look bad if it makes it look like the fight meant nothing.
She's like, I need to just wear this like a scar. Like, people need to know that I lost this and
I fought for it though. But also Rune asked Hami if he was going to resign, and it pissed off Hami, who's like, that's not your place to ask me that question.
So now they're fighting.
Yeah. And so she brings in people who were worried about her and went to Hilo, and they're all like, hey, no hard feelings. Ha, 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 ha. And she's like, sure, whatever. Get back to work.
Did you see me fight the most fearsome warrior in all of this? Yeah, you're next.
Shay does speak to Hami, and he's like, are you going to fire me? And she's like, no, I actually want to set up shop in Espenia, but like, I want you to run it. It's going to be a pretty big promotion for you technically, because like, you're at the highest level you are now, but if you went over to Espenia, you would be like almost a second mountain person, like, or a second weatherman, like you'd be pretty high up. But you wouldn't be able to wear Jade. It's now banned there. So like, you would have to go through withdrawals. And he's like, how bad is it? And she's like, well, it's not great, but like, you can do it. She entices him. And he says he will think on it and talk to his wife, but she thinks he'll take it. And she goes and she talks to Morrow at his campus, because she's definitely been avoiding him, and they break up, and she offers him friendship in the most like breakup ever. But it's like,
he's just like, you don't trust me and we need to communicate better. Do you think that moving forward, you could trust me to tell me things?
And she's like,
no, I don't think I could. And I'm also going to continue to not tell you things. So
also, were they ever in love? Because honestly, that was such a milquetoast breakup, where it's like, listen, if that's a breakup to you, like, you guys weren't together long enough. Like, she just kind of goes, and it's understood.
Why Morrow thinks that they're in love, or thinks that he's in love, because I'm like, I don't get it. Like, what is it that you guys have had like a couple of dates and you've talked about some political things? I've been like, and that's it. Like,
it was just really weird. I don't understand it, but whatever. And so we go on over to Andon, who's now kind of thriving. He has a part-time job. He's having sex with Corey. But now the crews are coming into the Greenbone territory now that you're not allowed to wear green. And they're coming at the pillar, the docks, pretty hard. And it's putting them at a huge disadvantage. There's also police coming. There's like higher rates of raids.
They keep coming to the grudge hall and everything. And it's like,
and they can't pay for everything. So Corey like is going on a trip before law school, and he wants Andon to come with him, but Andon knows that like he can't really do that. He doesn't feel comfortable going away from home. He's with the Hikes. They rely on him and the Hines. And he's like, well, also, wouldn't your parents know that like we're in a relationship if we took a trip together? And like, it's not seen, like, gay people aren't seen as well in Espenia as in KCON, and it worries him about what Corey's parents will think. And this also shows like the difference between Espenian children versus Kekonese children, who are very into like traditional, like, my parents approve, they understand, they accept. And Corey's like, why would I give a crap about what my parents think?
Right.
So one night they're at the
It's also mentioned too that like homosexuality in KCON is seen as something that's like almost along the lines of being like a stone eye.
Right.
Where it's just kind of like considered
a little
unlucky,
but like not the worst.
Yeah, they like don't like condemn people for it, but they're like, that's a little unlucky.
Yeah. And so one night they're at the grunge hall and the boys are all discussing their plans. Like one's joining the military, one's going to law school. They're kind of just like, hey, this is what's going on. And people are kind of like, why would you join the military if you can't wear green and they're against us? And he's like, well, it's a good future for me. So there's just different stuff going on. And there's a shooting outside and like all the greens go up to take care of it. And Corey's like, stay here, Andon. And Andon runs up because Andon be pushing his nose where he doesn't have any business in.
Well, and here's the thing though. I kind of feel like Andon is always like on the precipice of just being like, I don't think these people can handle this.
Yep.
And I want to just be on the edge just in case I need to grab some jade and do something because I am so much more effective than these people. Like, because that's where I was at this point where I'm like, is this the turning point? Is this the straw that breaks camel's back where he will finally grab some jade? Because I was worried something was going to happen to his lover and that he was going to be like, I have to step in and save him. And because I think that he sees how this form of a clan works and he kind of is just under the impression of they're not as good as we are in my country.
A little bit more brute force, like a little bit more guns, a little bit more
like,
military.
He's like, we're a lot more effective running a clan and with our skills with Jade. And if I were to have Jade, I would be much better at this. So in high tense situations, I feel like he's always just like kind of like hanging there waiting, like, do I need to step in?
And so he goes up. Corey's like pissed that he's there, but they take care of everything. Ron shoots the driver, and then Roan is like, hey, Andon, could you stall the police because you look less Kickanese, so they will trust you when you say that they went a certain way and I can get everyone out of the hall. And so Andon does this. And
he uses like an accent to make it sound like, what's that?
Yeah, no, to like hide like where he's from and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And so he does help them get away, and then he goes and he helps like Roan walk away, and Roan strips himself of his gloves where all of his green is hidden, and Andon realizes like it must be incredibly difficult to put on and off jade like that, and it must take a lot out of him. Andon is also seeing huge issues in Espenia with the Keckanese people. Corey also notes that Andon puts himself in a lot of trouble, and Mrs. Hine is super mad that Andon is getting involved with green bones. And she's like, you're so well behaved so often. Why are you doing this? There is a lot more danger in the area now. Like some bookmaking operations were being attacked. Green bones are like fake green bones are being called out for like retribution style stuff. And it's and the Hines, one of their sons wants them to move out to the suburbs with him, and he calls it an ethnic ghetto. So that's awesome. Doc asks Andon to talk to his family and ask for assistance. Andon's like, I don't have a ton of pull with my family anymore. And the Hines pull out the teapot, showing that he does have some favor. And he's like, well, I'll ask, but I can't promise anything. Hilo is meeting with the Espenians. They're discussing how they want to stop allowing Uiwan's refugees into Kekon. And Kekon is like, hey, no, they're at war. We can't allow like people to die on this island because you're fighting the Oratako. And they're like, well, you can't trust them not to come in and try to scavenge for jade. And Hilo's like, yeah, we can't trust your people not to rape some of our 16-year-olds. Right. And they're all like super uncomfortable.
And they're like, which is the bigger danger?
And they're kind of like, hey, that's like a one-off situation. And Hilo's like, no, it's not.
It's not.
And so they also think Kekon is too much on ceremony, and they're kind of super racist about it. They want Greenbones to fight in the war as soldiers, saying that like, hey, they're definitely soldiers. And Hilo's like, no, they're not. We do not. We have like a certain code of ethics that we follow. And they're like, well, that's outdated. And so they say that like the Ugatanians are trying to get all the influence in the world and take over everyone. So they should align with the Espenians, who at least want to give them their freedom, bare minimum. They're also trying to push for all of this jade and Greenbone help because the Nopi clan has been asking for better trade deals, and they're like, hey, we might consider, but they're not like, we'll give it to you. They're like, we might consider it if.
Yeah.
And
which
he was like,
I think is something we need to note, because I wanted to think that this is something that will come up later.
I'm sure it will. And Hilo is like, hey, we're not going to do that. We offered you a good price. We're standing on principle, and I'm leaving. And he walks out. And Shay's mad she couldn't speak with Hilo there. He appreciates her work and the destruction she did of all the shrine facilities, but he doesn't want like 5 to 10 years of waiting for them to get this influence. He wants it now. And she's like, well, I could have pointed out why this would have benefited us. And he's like, they wouldn't have listened. He notes that Ait has kind of been quiet right now. And they've been looking into the Iwe family, and they found that like the weatherman of the mountain clan has no proclivity for the shivers or shine addiction yet. And Hilo's like, I wonder who she's talking to. The itches, sorry. The shivers. I don't know. I call it the shivers.
I mean, that would make sense. Shiver shine.
Yeah, I know. So Hilo wonders who her rats are, and it's like, it's definitely your wife, but whatever. We find out that flashing back,
silly Wen out there at the spa all the time.
We find out that Ken is now married off screen.
Yeah, him and Lena.
They're going after Zapunyo, but he keeps getting more creative. And Shay says she wants to go to Espania to assist Andy and look over Port Massey. And Hilo goes, I'm going to go instead. I need you here. I can't have you traveling to Espania. We cut on over to Barrow, who is drunk and drinking with Moot. And Moot admits Barrow never intended to help him. He knew all along, and he should have trusted his instincts. And we found out that he drugged Barrow, and it's implied that he's definitely going to murder him. And he does believe he at least murdered him by overdosing him on shine.
Yeah, because he did exactly what Barrow did at the beginning of this. He remembers Barrow talking about doing this to a Greenbone to try and steal some jade. And so he does it to him.
Yep. And then we cut it over to Ken, who found out that Zapunyo dismembered one of his men that had like ratted on the shipments. They're kind of figuring out what all they can do to go after Zapunyo. And it's kind of just a mess, but it's a fun little jaunt into what's Ken doing. We also find out that Morrow is getting kind of like, what's the right word? Blackmailed or like trying to get help from people who say that they're like Shotarian, just like him, or like, and he's like, well, we could tell everyone about you and it would really affect Shay. So like, you should probably want to help us because like, we're going to work in your best interest. And Morrow's like, get out. And he's worried about that. So awesome. We cut on over to Moot, who believes he murdered Barrow, and he's like out eating and drinking, and he's getting drunk, and he's like bragging the same way Barrow does, but he's much clunkier about it, and he's not as lucky as Barrow was. So he starts bragging to these women, and he's like, I got my jade off of Kalan. And they're all like, we're gonna back away from you because you seem dangerous. And then we find out a bartender called in something on him.
The bartender was listening.
We cut on over to Andon, who's picking up Hilo with Roan, who's talking about like his daughter coming to visit, and he's like, oh, I didn't realize you had a daughter. And Hilo is like covering up his jade to be respectful of Espina. He's looking around, he's excited to see Andon. He's like hugging him, kissing him, and like Andon feels a little bit better about how Hilo's treating him.
He's like, oh, it's been a couple years, maybe he's kind of like gotten over it. Okay.
And he's like, hey, this is like the horn. And Rona's like, well, we don't stand on too much ceremony here. We're pretty laid back. And Hilo's like, oh, I'm just interested in seeing everything. Here's my tar. He's traveling with me. And so they head on over to the dog's house where they like have a huge meal for Hilo. They eat, they enjoy things. And they kind of discuss family and all of that. And Corey is there, and Andon's kind of like hiding from Corey. Like he doesn't want to show affection at all because Hilo's there and he's trying to like stand on ceremony. And so Hilo does agree to help the docs. He asks Doc Lusan to call a meeting of all the bosses, and he's like, we don't really hold that much sway. And he's like, you do, because you have Jade. They're going to be interested. They're going to want to know what you have to offer, and I will go with you and help out there. And so they agree to try. And he and during that time, Andon does sit over on Hilo's side, which is huge for him. So it's also noted too, like during this time when they're talking, like Corey gets up and leaves and like does the dishes, and he's like totally uninterested in this. And Andon's like, how embarrassing is this for him? Like he doesn't realize like he should have just stayed put. What is he doing? Right. And Hilo's like, hey, we'll talk later, Andon. Like, you know, they do go out for a drink. And they just kind of chit chat, and it feels a little bit like home. You know, he's showing him the kids and everything, and it's nice. So Doc Lusan is able to get all the bosses together, and this is told from the POV of Cromner, which is an interesting choice. Because we find out like Cromner, like doesn't believe Hilo's in charge, believes like he's just like some person because he's too relaxed and he's like, he doesn't care that much. And he doesn't understand that like Hilo doesn't really give a shit about these people.
Right.
Like he thinks like he would be much more intimidating if he were actually like at the head of anything. But during this time, he's kind of like, hey, why'd you call us? We find out about all the different crime bosses, all that stuff. And Hilo offers to sell them Jade directly from the No Peak clan if they can give them like $1 million dollars pretty much, or some kind of $100 million. And they negotiate this. And like Duck kind of looks surprised at all this. Cromner knows that he seems surprised that they would be willing to sell to him, but he's like, hey, yeah, that'll help me. And Hilo agrees to sell if they leave the Kekanese areas alone to do what they need to do.
You leave the South, what's it called? South something.
Southport, I think.
Maybe. That sounds right. He's like, you leave that alone. South Trap. He's like, you leave South Trap alone and just like stay out of our halls and everything, and we'll come up with this deal and it'll be fine. And they think they're going to be getting like all this quality jade, and they're like, oh, awesome, this is really going to advance us, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, listen, I only want the best people handling this. I don't want your like idiots.
Random ass people. Yeah, I don't want like idiots on the street to get a hold of this. And he's like, don't worry, we're going to like be careful.
And he's like, no, I need your word that like really capable people, like Jade is not for weak-willed people. This is for strong people. Like you cannot just have this floating around and getting in the hands of literal idiots. Like,
well, and he appoints someone to like watch over it. And so then later Duck is like traveling home with Hilo, and Hilo's like, look, I have a lot of like crappy jade that I want to offload on these people, and they're not going to know the difference, because you would know the difference, but they wouldn't. And he's like, but I also have a good ton of good jade, and I'm looking to set up shop in Hispania, and I want to filter it to you and have people help train. Like we're going to be sending over more people. We have a better relationship with everyone. And if we can get you guys trained, then you guys can have power whenever the crime boss gets sick of dealing with you guys. And like, then you will, I'm buying you time pretty much.
And he's like, well, I don't know how I feel about that. And he's like, listen to me. I will have you in a place of like more power and influence in 5 years. And then will be more support here in 5 years if you do this. I promise you that. Like anyone who knows me knows that my promises mean something.
Yep.
And it's like, this is why people like Hilo. Like even throughout all this meeting, we're in the perspective of like the crews, and they're like, wow, he's such like an amiable person. We weren't sure how we felt about these Kekanese people, but he is actually quite great.
Right. And so he does like agree to talk to people. He's like, I need them to vote. And Hilo's like, don't worry, I'm going to make you powerful than any other crew. And so Andon meets with Hilo before Hilo leaves, and he asks about returning to Kekon. And Hilo tells him not yet. He tells him about the agreement with Cromner and how they want to train Greenbones, and he really needs eyes and ears here who he can trust, and he can trust Andy. And Andon is kind of horrified by this prospect. He really thought if he could be good, they'd let him return. And also Andon, like, Hilo blames Shay for this, where he's like, Shay should have told you this, but she leaves me to do all the bad guy work. Like, we need you here. We think you're an asset. And like, unless you're going to put on green, you cannot return home, because we cannot.
Well, and the thing is, it's like, he says it like this, like you said, but it's like, Hilo, you're in charge. She ran this by you. You should be able to deliver news like this. It's part of your job. And the only reason you don't want to do it in this situation is because you are the bad guy when it comes to this thing, because you've been so unreasonable. And the way that Andon reacts is he's like, seriously, how long am I going to be punished like this? And he's like, it's not a punishment. This is you getting an opportunity to learn all these things in a way that hopefully you can help us. And he's like, I don't want to be here forever. And he says, promise me that you will put on Jade right now. And we will go back this instant. I will have you flying out right now. Right. And he's like, I can't make that promise.
And like, Hilo is helpful, where he's like, look, you seem successful here, and like, you are more Kekanese than most, so you are a huge asset here for me right now. And like, don't you want to be with Corey? Because he's totally like flagged that they're together. And he's like, well, he always knew it was a temporary thing. I'd rather be home. I want to be home. I'm fine here now, but like, no. And he's like, well, look, it's better for us to have you here, so you're not going to be moving anytime soon. And he's like, take care of yourself. And so Andy just calls Corey and he's like, want to have sex? And he's like, sure, I'll do that. Even though you can tell Corey's a little bit upset with how he would treated him around Hilo.
Yeah.
And so Shay's kind of like, what are you doing? Why did you make agreements with crime bosses, Hilo? And Hilo's like, look, this is a good idea.
I can't let you out of the country anymore because every time you leave, I have a big mess to clean up.
And he's like, just get it done. We have all this extra jade. You can send it over. And like, now Swen has been raiding Zapuno's jobs the same way we have. Like, we have them busy. We have this busy. Like, we're setting ourselves up to be successful here. And Shay is like, he's not wrong, but he's also not right. And so, we're also like, they decided to have Woon Papidunoa's wedding at the house. So they're like,
they paid for all of it and everything.
Yeah. And he's like, hey, is Morrow coming? And she's like, well, we're on some kind of break, but he's coming as a guest to the wedding and everything. And
he'll be my date for this. So.
And he's like, just be honest with him about stuff. And she's like, well, he's like involved in humanitarian stuff. And like, he's not going to be happy with the way our family acts and the way we're feeling about like maybe shutting out refugees. Like, that's not good. And then she's like, how's Andy? And he's like, well, he wasn't happy, but he understands. And she asks him if he really would have had a dirty blade if Ite had killed her. And he said the important part was she thought I would do it. And that's way more important. So we find out that he was probably bluffing a little bit, but who knows? Which is interesting because it's more underhanded than I expect for Hilo. He's usually overhanded. We also find out that Chancellor's son is preparing to retire, and they don't want him to retire. They want him to stay on in a role that's like pretty heavily influential. Like, he still gets a vote. He still gets everything. And so he agrees to not retire so that they can keep in control, because the person who's going to be replacing him is a mountain person.
Right.
We also have Shay getting a little bit drunk at Woon's wedding. And Morrow takes her back to her house, and they're kind of sitting, and he's talking about like how he wants her to.
When I first mentioned that, he says like, that was a really fancy wedding that you threw for Woon. You guys must think a lot of him. And she was like, he was Lan's friend. And then she thinks, and mine.
Oh my God, he's her best friend. And he's like, hey, could your brother support the Oritakan Conflict Refugee Act? And she was like, well, we might not be able to do that because we need to protect foreign interests. And she's like, let's not talk politics now. And they're kind of like, oh, well, we have nothing left to say to each other.
I know.
And then Morrow has this like weird, again, they have like no conversations ever that we see on the page. I don't understand why they like each other. This relationship does not work, because all of a sudden he's like, I can't be your friend anymore. And it's like,
friend thing isn't working.
And she's like, I know, I tried, it didn't work. And he's like, if you could just be honest with me. And so she's like, yeah, so I had a schmabortion before I fought Aitmata. And she's like, I love you too. And this is so unfair, because she's like,
the way that she does that and like reveals information and then says, I love you. Like,
also, this conversation shouldn't be had over a lot of alcoholic beverages.
No,
where it's like, hey, so I had this thing happen that I cut you out of the decision-making process. I didn't tell you about. I kept it from you for months and months and months. So yeah, I love you. If you want to make it work, the ball's in your court now. It's like, that's not how you tell someone who you respect any information. Like, you get to have a lead-up conversation where you describe why you had those decisions, and she just doesn't. And so he kind of just leaves. And
I think that's what makes it so, like, it's frustrating to read this part, because you're just like, Shay, you could have explained your situation, and he probably would have been understanding of it. He seems like a fairly understanding person from what we know,
right?
The very little that we know. But it's like,
but you didn't give him that option. You took that away from him. It's almost like a way to prove that he loved you, which is not healthy.
It's almost like she's being self-destructive on purpose. Or not, like, I don't know. She just doesn't want this relationship to work out. She wants to be with Woon. So she's purposely trying to destroy this relationship with him in order to make that happen.
Right. So yeah, it sucks a lot. And that's kind of the end of the next section, I believe. Correct?
Oh, I don't think so. I think there's a little more, isn't there?
It's the end of chapter 42.
Oh, I thought we were doing through 43.
Oh, I thought we were ending at 42. We're ending at 42.
Okay, well, Never mind then.
Do you want to do 43? We can.
Well, 40. Let's do 43 because I feel like it's a good.
Okay. Well, if you haven't, guys, go read the next 5 pages and then come back. Because
it's a short chapter. So
Hilo drives to an abandoned farmhouse where the mics are. And there is a child there rolled up in a rug and wearing Kalan's jade. And they got a tip from a bartender. And we have a moment where Hilo remembers 2 teenagers that he once let go. And he always thought it was bad juju. And he thought it showed societal rot and an omen of worse to come, being one of Land's killers, actually. But he doesn't know that. Mm-hmm. And then the thief is mad at the mics and says that you killed my Mootjin. You killed my father, Mootjin. He owned a store and a bit of jade. That's all. And they were like, no, that wasn't all, you idiot. Like he had so much more going on.
They're like, he was a thief and a ringleader of a big crime.
Like he's a huge crime syndicate person. Like, of course he had to die. And then they point out that he's wearing the pillar's jade and he admitted to killing Lan. And he's like, that was some other guy. It wasn't me. But Hilo makes him swallow 3 of Hilo's gems that he used to wear on his body.
Basically, like, you want the jade so bad. You know what? We're gonna bury you with it.
And they bury it with it inside him. He will not have shine on him. It will have a huge amount of itches come. And they bury him alive in a box.
Yep.
So he will die slowly. And he says, I'm glad I can count on you, Tar. I don't say it often enough. And we find out that Tar also has things he's calling nails, which are supposed to be different than fingers. And I hate that so much. But they're going to be going on to do other things now. And then he goes home. He's sitting in the dark. And Nico comes out and he's like, why are you sitting in the dark, Uncle? We find out that he asks him to call him Uncle to remind him of who his father is. Right. And he says, I want to show you something. And he shows the jade that he found of his father's. And he said, this was your father's. One day it will be yours. And he said, I'll have to be a lot bigger first. And Hilo says, a lot bigger. And he picks up the child and carries him back up the stairs. And that's the end of it. This is getting good. I can't wait to see the final portion of this book.
74% in.
We're at 74%. And guys, it's getting real, real good. I can't wait to see what happens next.
A lot is happening. A lot.
So much is happening. That
we covered so much.
We covered so much. I think we can we can finish up quickly today because I cannot wait until we talk next week and finalize Jade War because this is getting really good and I have no idea where it's going. So guys, hope you enjoyed this wonderful talk. I'm sure it's about 2 hours long, so we hope you like us.
We're going over 2 hours.
Oh my god. And guys, make sure you're rating, reviewing, and subscribing. Make sure you're looking at our link tree for all our social platforms, including our Patreon. Sign up there if you would like to support us. It helps the podcast a lot.
Find us
even
at all the places.
Our Pod at all the places, or ourpod.com to read some great reviews we're posting there. And join us next week to finish up Jade War, the plot episodes. We can't wait to talk then. Bye.
Bye.